Hey, this is one of the most controllable ways to increase your profit margins after getting squeezed by inflation for the last 3, 4 years. Here it is coming right up. This is part 3 of our 3 ways to increase your profit margins despite inflation. This is Wolf's Watch. I'm Wolf, and thank you for being part of the conversation. This last third part here is the easiest, most control, well, easiest in the sense that you have total control over it. Customer facing, right? Market facing ways of increasing profit margins. The market still has a big say. This third part, all internal. And get ready to take a quick note on this. I'm going to tell you what it is. And you're going to be surprised how simple it is, but it takes some hard work. And not like adding 1,000 hours a year to your already overly worked schedule, not adding another 3, 4 hours a day. It just takes some coordinated work in order to get it to happen. Then it actually makes your day simpler, right? One of the challenges as a business owner is it's increasing complexity, right? Something new, new regulations, shifts in the marketplace, new people, new suppliers to work with, new competitors coming into your market niche. And now all this AI stuff has been happening all throughout 2023. This is something that will ultimately simplify your day as the leader of your company, but also will increase your margins and set a positive cycle in motion where your team will be focused on continuing to get better at that and increase them more. Stay ahead, not just stay ahead of the curve of inflation, but actually be increasing margins in spite, in without, it doesn't matter what's going on in the marketplace because of what you're doing. Here's an example. Before I give you the tip, here's an example. In a manufacturing process for an aircraft manufacturer that I worked with a number of years ago, won't name them, but they had a challenge in an assembly sequence. And it's like they're doing things that go do this first, do this next, do this next, do this next. Well, if they change the order, just the order of the assembly sequence, it would save them a week on the production of an aircraft. And think about that. A commercial airliner, right? They're expensive. The cost of manufacturing them is very expensive too. So a day costs a lot of money. Think about how big the building alone is to be able to house not one, but typically 3, 6 commercial airliners in the production flow all at one time. The building's that big, right? So a lot of space, a lot of tooling, a lot of equipment, thousands of people. So if you can eliminate the cost of an entire week of manufacturing time of fixed costs, paying for lights, everything that goes along with that, paying salaries of people. Now, this is not reducing headcount. This is not putting people on the street. This is just saying, okay, we're going to redivert that to more productive work, right? And get the product delivered a week faster, which means we can invoice faster, which means we can get paid faster. But no one had the authority to make any of the changes. And in fact, the whole argument, instead of looking at literally millions of dollars that would have been saved across the next year or two, the argument was around who had the authority to address the question. How crazy is that? And now in big organizations, you get those kind of arguments. The point that I want to make here is it was what they were doing to create the product that the customer was buying. Now, this applies to product or service, right? In software development, you have agile and Scrum processes, which is get it out fast, do what creates value, and that is the key, and that is the tip. Focus on what creates value. That's the first half of the tip. So, what is it that your customer is really buying from you? What problem are you solving for them? In part one, that discussion and part of the tip was spend time with your key customers, with your best customers. And I just got out of a mastermind call where two people that had built massive businesses were talking about how they look at what was it? One of them phrased it as the exercise of killer clone, right? Who do you want to move out of the organization? What customers do you want to move off your customer list? Who do you want to clone? Who do you want more of because they add so much value? Right. So it's looking at adding value, then bringing that back through the organization. So as you do that, what is it they value? What are they really paying for? How do you clone those customers? That's part of tip one. But bear with me for a second here. I'm getting excited, getting tongue tied. Walk back through how you create and deliver that value to the customer. Now, in manufacturing, it's very physical, right? So you can see it. In service delivery, in software development, not as physical, but it's still there. What are the steps that you need to go through, and how do they align with what the customer really wants? Is it really creating value for the customer? Is it really doing something that you're going to get paid directly for? If not, why are you doing it? So this is the first half. The second half is then begin reorganizing your entire company around that flow of value. We still, in many, many cases, in when I picture companies, I still catch myself too often doing this. We think in terms of hierarchy, top-down hierarchy. Jim Collins related a discussion with Frances Hesselbein, CEO of the Girl Scouts, of all places. Hugely valuable lesson for you and for me. Frances Hesselbein talked about being in the center and everything radiating out, right? She wasn't above anything. She was a link, the central hub in the people that were making stuff happen. So think of yourself as being in that central hub, but look at how does your company, instead of top down, which tends to have silos based on, in big companies, you see it. And it's why I use a big company example. And we'll bring it back to small and mid-sized companies. Okay. So you get, like engineering's over here, you got manufacturing here, quality there, finance and accounting's over here doing this thing, sales and supplier management, they're over there, they got their own thing going. Well, where can you have flow of value with that kind of organizing around skills, or organizing around task, right? Don't do that. This is where you can create massive competitive value, or massive competitive advantage, because how you organize that workflow will be unique. It'll be unique based on how you perceive it, what your strengths are personally, what the strengths of your team are, what your company culture is, what your values are versus another competitor. So when you get that dialed in, that's not something that somebody can come in and just go to a price war on, because now you've got very unique value because of how you deliver it, right? You match that up with what we talked about in tip one, which is very customer relationship focused. Put those two things together. Oh man. Now you've got a relationship that competitors are not going to be able to break. Right? Now, the reality of it, yeah, some will still go to a competitor on price or some other thing that they need or want that they're not getting from your organization. The thing is, it'll be a tiny percentage of the loss of customers that you would get through due to competition if you're not doing this. And it's certainly way, way less and far less painful than what happens if you fall into the trap of a price war. Don't be a commodity. If you want to be a commodity, I can't help you. Not calling that as something bad, just saying that's not the space I work in. I want you to be premium. I want you to be unique. I want you to deliver value in a way that nobody else can, so your customers would crawl across broken glass to still do business with you. Maybe not the right analogy in a holiday season, but it's the one that comes to mind. So look at it. Look at what's that flow of value? You got to go from customer back to your suppliers so you don't lose that thread, right? This is what they value. Take this step back and ask the question, do they value this? Is your customer actually paying for this? Your customer doesn't pay you to do accounting or bookkeeping, but you have to do it, right? So that's something we look at. How do we get efficient in that? How do we manage, how do we have a little bit more of a effectiveness and a cost management on that? We need to stay effective first, but we really focus on managing the cost there and look at this and go, on this step, well, we're really, for a factory, it's why you don't see a lot of work in process sitting on the floor in factories anymore. Nobody's paying for that, right? And it's expensive and it's eating up space. It's not generating revenue. So you don't want to do that. You don't want things to stop and flow. So I go, okay, how do we stop doing it? What do we need to change in order to stop doing that? Or at least drive it down to the very minimum. Not going to get into a just-in-time manufacturing example. Just-in-time manufacturing got beat up a lot during the lockdown because supply chain shut down. It's like, okay, now what do? You don't have a big warehouse of stuff. You can't get anything for 90 days because you're buying it offshore and it's got to come across the ocean on a container ship. And oh, by the way, the people on the other side of the ocean, they're not producing anything anyway. You're stuck. That's a larger issue. We're talking about within the walls of your operation. That's why it's controllable. What you have absolute control over. Walk through this with, reorganize around that. Then it gives you some breathing space and a completely different perspective to look at those larger issues of how do we protect against supply chain disruptions? How do we better serve customers? How do we break into new markets? Because now you've got a much more flexible, much more highly profitable operation. So that's the third place. Operations, big margins, high productivity. Focus on the value only. Something I mentioned before is my favorite case study in dialing in what everybody's doing and being focused on value was a bank branch. And this goes to the 1980s. And you know what? A meeting I was in earlier today, I was thinking, man, it's just amazing how I hear so many people talking about solving the exact same problems that we solved in the 80s and 90s. And here going through it again, like it's something that's brand new and never been tackled before. So here's something that while it may seem like it's ancient history, that's very, very relevant today. Imagine walking into your place of business and being at night and finding a janitorial crew cleaning up your office space that you lease from somebody else that owns the building. And you ask them why they're doing what they do. And they know exactly how everything that they do, they know exactly how their frequency of cleaning the offices contributes to the building, generating more revenue because tenants like you are happier in the building. This is what happened in the bank branch. The person that was responsible for sweeping the floors and cleaning the facilities could explain exactly how what that job performance did, how that affected customer satisfaction. And that person had a lot of pride in what they do because they were contributing. That focused on delivering value. You need that level of focus. Bad news is it takes discipline. It does take some hard work, it takes some changes, it takes being open to looking at it completely differently, open to taking input from people that hopefully you value and listen to already. And if not, then it might be a little bit of a challenge to have someone recommend, how often do we sweep the floor in order to keep the customers happy? How often do we sweep the floor in order to keep the manufacturing team happy? How often do we sweep the floor so that the software folks working in the office feel good about where they're at? And because it's good, if people are coming to work and enjoying it, and I don't mean party environment, I mean, they have pride, they're getting satisfaction out of it. Joy, not happiness, different thing, right? Where they're into what they're doing, they're glad to be on the team, and they're there to contribute and grow along with your company. Things work way, way better. You already know that. Just a reminder, especially on this holiday season. So that's part 3. And thanks for being part of the conversation. I'm Wolf. This is Wolf's Watch. I look forward to seeing you sometime when I'm sweeping the floor.